Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games Network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network. Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team go over all the storytelling, world building, and characters of video games because it's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep, and this is episode 96.
And we are both so
very tired.
Tired. Oh my gosh. We have a stubborn son who thinks 3 a.m. is a great time to party.
Yep. How am I supposed to segue from that in? Never mind.
No. But if you're also up at 3 a.m. and you're not sure what to do, Mystic is about to tell you a bunch of great things that you can do right now.
Yeah, if you'd like to contact us, you can do that in multiple different ways. Twitter, Instagram, Mastodon, Reddit, YouTube, Steam, all down in the description. And if you'd like to email us, you can do that at loretogether@gmail.com. And to support the podcast, and we hope you do, or support our Let's Plays. If you want to support our stuff, you can do that by going to patreon.com/loretogether to get early access to our episodes, early access to our Let's Plays, which Safi's is coming back sometime soon, hopefully.
I just need to put out a survey, I promise you.
Oh, yeah, I have to do a survey for Mass Effect still.
How many times have I told my husband that we need to put up the survey in Patreon for our Mass Effect choices? So many times, guys. So many times.
All right. I'll put it up after we record this. So, yeah, support us there. Also, hearts, thumbs up, likes, stars, whatever it is, wherever you're watching, we appreciate them all.
Yes.
Listening, watching, listening. We're tired.
Well, some of you do watch on YouTube, so I'll give you that,
That's
even
true.
though half the time it's a static picture if you're listening to the episode. But you can also find our past live streams there, some of our older Let's Plays as we slowly release those out.
Yep.
Though some Let's Plays are actually still exclusive to the Patreon right now.
Mm-hmm.
Does that include what this episode's covering today?
Yes.
All right. Well,
This is not... So, Safi kind of knows what's going on in this one because a bunch of our patrons have been asking for a debrief on this game.
you can call it, like, with this and Mortal Kombat, you can call this a spoiler September, if you will.
Yeah. So...
Spoiling Safi September.
We are covering Firmament, which is the most recent game by Cyan. And I love Cyan. I want to say Firmament is them at their peak. However, I don't believe that statement.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with it either. It really comes down to which aspect of the game we're talking about.
I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of couching. So, like, our first, if you know our series, our first 2 episodes, we're covering Myst.
And we've gone back to that franchise a bunch.
A bunch. We've also covered Abduction.
Yes.
And
that was our first big Let's Play series.
Yes. And we are fans of what Cyan can do in that storytelling space. But I have a feeling that Firmament tried to do something a little off course. And I get the sense from our fans who have, like, kept asking Mystic's opinion on it in particular, because Mystic's more of the fan who follows it. And also just hearing Mystic talk about this around the house, that, like, this is going to be a lot of couching of, I love this, but this is good. However, you know?
Yes.
I have a feeling that this episode may not go over well with some.
Okay,
I don't know.
So
I'm not sure how
before
this
we
is gonna
do
go.
our individual couchings of individual parts of the game, let's couch the game. This
I'm
was
not
done.
I don't think I have any right to couch anything because I
Well,
didn't play this and I don't know the story.
You don't have to play this or know the story for this part. We did have a big, huge change in the world during the development of this, in terms of the pandemic throwing a wrench into every single thing that has ever been created during that time. Number one. Number two, there was a changing of the guard kind of at Cyan, where they had new people come in, old people left. A lot of that stuff happened too. Mm-hmm. So in that, taking that all into account, and, did that make the game smaller than it should be? A lot of games got some truncation or came out and is not as good as it probably would have been otherwise. So take that into account when we're looking at Cyan here, because Cyan is a small independent developer now compared to some other games we cover. So in that regard, it's hard to kind of say what this game could have been or should have been when we look at it through that lens. I mean, I can't really talk about much more of it without telling you about the game in total. And again, as we cover any game that's this new, spoiler warnings for Firmament, because it is a new game. I think this came out 4 months ago at most. It came out in May.
It's hard for me to gauge it because we've been talking about it, I think, ever since we started doing our live streams publicly. We used to have them behind our Patreon.
Yes, but ever since we've been doing them publicly people have been talking about it.
There's been anticipation, talking about when Cyan would release more news, and finally it came out, and then people's thoughts about it.
Yeah.
A lot of the fans that you have kept up with us, you all have been big fans.
Yeah. Let me say that if this is at all your genre, and that would be walking simulators or first-person puzzle games or first-person narrative adventure games, check this out. Add it to your library. I don't think it's an ill-advised addition to your library, even if the end result may not be as enjoyable or as good as it could have been.
It will just not hit. It'll hit differently than, say, Myst, Abduction, and those games have.
Yeah. And even in the fan communities, I consider Abduction to be better than most of Myst. That is sacrilege to quite a few Cyan fans.
Well, we'll say this, in the Lore Together household, and I don't want to take on too long, because not only are we tired, but Mystic warned me this script is long. So, but I feel like I just want to explain that as much as we know that nostalgia is a personal thing that gives you warm fuzzies inside, we don't think nostalgia trumps quality storytelling.
Right.
We don't think nostalgia trumps quality game products. We think that things can be good for the time they were released in, and some really good games are actually capital T timeless, and some parts of the art have gotten so much better and much more relatable as time goes on that a newer game is going to be better than what came before. End of story.
And again, serious spoiler warning, like I said, they actually had a thing in the game for, I believe it was this game, because I was watching a lot of different Let's Plays of different things at the time when this first came out, and I started my blind Let's Play. I checked out a couple other, early previews or the first episode of other people's things. I never watched past it. I never watched past where I had been, but I would see what other people thought of the very beginning.
Yeah.
And a couple of them are oh yeah, we had a warning at the beginning of, if you review this, don't spoil the ending without a warning. So just want to make that very clear. And I'll give you another warning later before we get to the end. Okay. So we're going to start with how the game starts, and then we'll dig into the meaty stuff later.
Okay.
And we awaken from a nicely cushioned pod.
Oh.
And get spoken to by what appears to be a ghost, but is likely a projection or recording of some type. She may be a ghost. It's never explained, but I feel like it comes across more as a context-sensitive playback of a recording.
Okay.
If that makes sense. She addresses us, her form dissolving and reforming as she moves around. She tells us that she was once a blank slate like us, and that we are a keeper. And it is our job to keep the realms.
Are we on the Citadel?
No. We did make that joke in our Mass Effect Let's Play, though.
Oh, my God.
Surprisingly, she also tells us that she will lie to us.
What?
She's learned that is the way to keep the realms, by lying. What are realms? Well, we'll get there in a minute. Lastly, she introduces us to our adjunct, which is a bit of tech that we will use to interface with things within the realms.
Okay.
It's basically... this is kind of...
It hasn't earned tenure yet?
This is a weird game. It is very dynamic compared to most other Cyan games. There is a lot of turning and twisting and looking at things because everything is controlled by this adjunct. You're not clicking levers. You're using sockets on walls to move things and everything.
So it's constantly like literally the metaphor of when you have a hammer, everything is a nail.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I think part of it is that Cyan really designs for VR first now, which is both something to that is laudable, but also a hindrance in some ways.
I'll just say personally of the opinion, either design for VR or don't design for VR. I think it needs to be two different development processes, but that might be asking a lot for how the industry is structured now.
I also think Cyan is really trying to recapture we caused a massive growth in CD-ROM sales and CD drive sales, so we want to push VR and be that again where we can push it. And I don't see it. This is not a genre that's that big anymore.
That's almost 30 years old. Like,
yeah,
so much changes in 30 years. Like, just thinking about when I turned 30, because yes, I am over that age. When I turned 30, like, just thinking about all the things that happened in my life that were capital B, big changes, you know?
I mean,
you can't expect anything in an industry to not ebb and flow with changes like that.
Technological evolution has been an insane growth. So
ridiculous.
Anyway, we turn and leave the room, finding a small book explaining the adjunct and how we can use sockets to control mechanisms like doors, vehicles, etc. Mm-hmm. The adjunct will fire a part of itself from our hand along a tendril of glowing energy to interact with the aforementioned sockets. I mention that because we head upstairs, finding our first door to open, which smells like a tutorial door.
Oh.
Yeah, basically fire it here and open, like that. Basically learn how to use your stuff. And then walk onward through the rest of the building, finding it filled with furniture equipment more at home in the 1900s than a setting with a contraption that can float on a beam of energy and interact with things at a distance.
From a distance, there is harmony.
On the floor, we can also see drag marks. They extend all the way downstairs to the pod that we woke up in.
So, like, as if the pod was dragged
yes.
in here. Okay.
We'll continue to hear our mentor as we traverse the game, but it's kind of maddening in some ways. There's no record or synopsis within game of her monologues. I'm not trying to say that there must be a exhaustive document of all of them. We didn't get all of Gen's dialogue in Riven written down, or Saavedra's dialogue in Myst 3, or CW's dialogue in Abduction.
Right.
But unlike those games, which had long in-game journals, and if you talk to CW, he'll at least tell you again in brief, in an annoyed way, what to do.
Like, why are you bothering me? Didn't I tell you to do blah?
Talking to Gen, you had 3 chances to click the book correctly, so there's repetition at least. Here we have very little world building to work with within the majority of this game except for her speeches. And I'm not saying I don't understand the choice of leaving the realms mostly barren given the plot we will be unraveling, but this game was a bit difficult to get through. It took me a lot longer to play through than I thought it was going to, because I had nothing to kind of pull me along breadcrumb style.
I think if you're not going to have a record of what characters say in a game where the text, whether spoken or read, is important, you need to have at least some sort of tool to let you refer to what the goal that was alluded to in that text.
I mean, it's not even that. She doesn't tell us anything that's actually puzzle related, really.
But is it like story beat related?
Yes.
Is it steps related? Okay.
It is story beat related. It is world building related. And, I can excuse it to a degree. We've played games where you don't have all the dialogue spelled out for you and have it accessible. But it is so inconsistent, especially when I first started playing. I couldn't hear her over the whole first hour because of a glitch.
Yeah.
That it's so inconsistent when you do hear her that you may never notice she's talking at first or paying attention because you're trying to figure out a puzzle or you're walking or whatever. So half the time I missed half of what she said anyway.
Right.
Anyway, I promise I'm done ragging on the game for the time being. Let's move on.
But do as much ragging as you must, Mystic, because that might be part of the process here.
We use our adjunct to exit a bunker that we are kind of housed within. It's kind of a cool mechanism in some ways. Mm-hmm. The whole bunker raises from the ground, letting in the cold air that surrounds the structure, allowing us to see the first realm, Curivale. At the time, we don't know that's the name, but
We'll just go with it
Unless
for now.
the mentor mentions it and I didn't hear it because, again, glitched. So, it is a world of ice and mountains, a breathtaking view of frozen beauty stretching as far as we can see.
We're no longer in the middle of an ocean. I know that's been years ago, but I still can't get over that.
Oh, no, they still do it.
Okay.
As we play, we'll unlock more and more of the realms, and each of them has a purpose that will slowly become evident. Getting past a bridge out puzzle, we will find our first conveyance pod, a basically spherical pod. This one's blue in color. These things take us to various locations within a realm. Basically, it's fast travel within a realm, or to what's called the Swan. The Swan is a bit like our hub. And when we first arrive at the Swan, we find it a strange room with It's basically a gold dome with glowing stars in this dome, and a giant globe sitting in the middle with stars and rings around it. It looks pretty cool. I kind of like it. Mm-hmm. There's a plaque directly in front of us, though, with the following. Keepers Rest. Welcome to the Swan. You have earned the honor of resting. You require cycles of rest, as do all living things. Recharge for your purpose of keeping the realms. Converse with your comrades. Disport yourself with crafts, music, or frivolity. Find respite in your quarters. Acknowledge the lights of the firmament above, those who now sleep. Yet, do not be overly focused on rest. The purpose of rest is to assist us in fulfilling our keeping with increased energy and renewed vigor. Do not concern yourself with fatuous dreams during rest. Dreams are not trustworthy, rational, or measurable. Dreams bring false thoughts from our subconscious that might distract us from our true conscious purpose.
That I could see getting misconstrued real easy.
You are a keeper. Rest is a vital part of keeping. Appreciate the small rests until it's time for your deep sleep. And it's signed, The Founders.
Whoa. Okay. This feels very culty.
We also see 2 more conveyance pods, each labeled on the floor in front of the door, one green for St. Andrews and one red one to Jewelston. However, we also see drag marks again, heading from the Curiervale conveyance pod past Jewelston, up a couple flights of stairs, and into a door that splits left and right. Following the drag marks left, we find a dozen names painted haphazardly in different colors on a wall with the plaque Keeper's Wake written on it above a grating of some kind.
Oh, wow.
The drag marks lead directly to that grating.
Okay.
Heading back to the split and going right, we find the exact mirror of that room, sans names on the wall, and a plaque that says Keepers Sleep above the grating.
Wait a second. So the whole speech about dreams was it below the grating? I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up.
No, this plaque was in the middle of the floor on a post, basically a sign, and then we followed the drag marks to this room where there's Keepers Wake and Keepers Sleep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
As we were following those drag marks, though, we did pass a hall with some dorms, and inside, I think it's actually 007. They're all numbered.
Oh.
We find not only a bunch of propaganda posters with sayings like, "We answer," "We know," "We keep," and "Keepers together," followed by "Our answers will provide." We also have "The firmament will prevail," "Keeper together," and "Maintain the firmament," followed by simply "Keep" at the bottom.
God, that sounds like so much pressure.
Yeah. So it's a little weird.
It's like they did everything to basically not just post a copy of Keep Calm and Carry On over and over again.
We also find a book here with 2 passages, the Keeper's Poem and the Keeper's Parable.
Okay.
I'll read the poem. I will not read the parable because the parable is long. The
Okay.
poem. Observe the firmament above. Our waking lights shine bright. Our comrades in the tapestry, a wondrous, restful sight. The lights, the lights, the lights of wake alive above our head. The dark, the dark, the dark of sleep. Deep sleep we do not dread. The vault is ours to contemplate, a canvas of our lights, an ever coruscating web, the hallmark of our nights. The lights, the lights, the lights of wake, the keeping missions bind. The dark, the dark, the dark of sleep, the threshold clears our minds. The firmament we know our tasks, the realms promise to keep. We pledge our waking hours to thee until our time to sleep. The lights, the lights, the lights of wake, the realms are sore adored. The dark, the dark, the dark of sleep, we sleep to be restored. Some day the realm shall be fulfilled, arrivers shall draw nigh. They shall awaken the embrace, our destiny supply.
Okay, very culty. And like my concern is that all this reference to sleep makes me think of, I mean, it constantly not like the darkest sleep until there's a big sleep. The big sleep sounds like a finality, if you will. And that just concerns the heck out of me.
It does feel very culty.
Mm-hmm.
Justifiably so.
Yeah.
Both of us have been fans of cult and true crime in the past, and yeah, this feels very culty.
It feels very much like that.
The Keeper's Parable is a bit denser and mentions how. Basically, I don't want to read the whole thing. It's 5 pages.
No way. That's the majority of your script right now.
Yeah, and mentions how well, it's not that long. It's 5 small pages, but it's just very wordy. Mentions how other keepers in other realms we cannot reach contributed to the firmament mission and the common good. However, one day after deep sleep, a keeper woke with a troublesome idea, a way he called more. How they could work for their own benefit rather than the good of all. The troublesome keeper kept saying more could come from everywhere and would last forever. Eventually he wore down their resolve and they came to embrace the desire for more. Slowly the realms began to suffer, machinery began to break, and crops and animals began to get sick and die. Eventually some keepers began to get sick as well, and those who had more began to look down on those who had less. Then a wise keeper remembered the ways of keeping, and they were able to overcome the forces of more and return to faithful ways of keeping and caring for all.
So don't have any desire for yourself. You should only desire to maintain the status quo and give of yourself to the status quo, which, okay, creepy as all heck. And just so,
in certain, if I gave you the full parable, in certain readings, there are certain parts I'm like, okay, yeah, fine, and then it's like, no, that's getting a little weird now.
Well, to be honest, like I don't know why it might be because I'm tired, so my brain's going in even weirder directions than it usually does when we're recording, but it just reminds me of. So the beginning of the Star Trek Voyager series with Kes and her people who essentially were all put on this planet where, they didn't really need for anything. And it turns out it's because they were all like experiment subjects. Yeah. And it was just this intelligent race basically subjugating by proxy this other intelligent race without them really understanding why. It feels like that same kind of vibe. Like there's a bigger plan by people who are actually controlling these keepers, and we don't know why they're controlling these keepers, but it's for some machination or some idea that an outside group feels is much more important or much more worthy and worthy of subjugating who these keepers are to maintain.
That's fair. Down another hallway, basically there's 2 hallways of dorms, we have another book, this time a handwritten journal.
Oh.
In it, someone is left struggling alone to comprehend the events that have transpired. We kind of are forced to play the pronoun game because we're not quite sure who has written this. My guess is our mentor, but there's no evidence to that.
Right.
There is some, but not without spoiling the story.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
How unbearable, basically, they are contemplating how unbearable the truth is, how dark and cold and boundless the void is, and how it all hinges on one man named Turner. He is called a dark power, a monster, and yet even Turner is only a tool in a dark plan. They were all the keepers, and all naive souls nourished by lies and Turner's dark power. Our writers saved them, no idea who them are,
Right.
and also lost them. Again, no idea who them are. Now our writer is trapped, completely alone with the burden of knowledge and deception. They are left wondering if this dark plan can save them, and wish to rid themselves of, quote, such beautiful deceit, and then wonders if that's even possible.
So now we've got parallels to the parable.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if the parable is there in response to whatever's in the journal. And it makes me believe that if the parable exists, but this journal still exists, that there's a bit of like a cycles thing, almost kind of like in the Matrix trilogy, where it's the idea that they've had to do this over and over again because inevitably some sort of outlier is going to call out the structure of everything and rebel against it.
This journal is very important for something I'm going to bring up at the very end for this game. Mm-hmm. Not lore related, but how I think they could fix the problems people have.
Oh, okay.
So if I give you a full transcript of the journal, honestly, there might be enough there to analyze and taking a few leaps to get to what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So I only say that though after beating the game, playing this, no idea when I first played it. Like I could not really see what they were trying to talk about.
Oh, okay.
We now traverse the realms for a long time, though it is punctuated by great moments of getting past the roadblocks in your way. This is a Cyan game, and while some have complained about the puzzles in the game, I found them to be within the standard for Cyan. Maybe not as difficult as previous ones, but definitely not a walk in the park either.
Yeah, and it's all about, like, if you play these games on the regular, you're going to get better at these puzzles. And sometimes that's part of the fun. Like, we have a friend who, she's really into escape rooms.
Yes.
So we have a friend who is really into escape rooms, and for her, part of the fun is just building on the knowledge she's had from different escape room experiences and using that to help solve and figure out puzzles, because no puzzle's ever really truly like an exact one-to-one if it's being done right.
Right.
But there's like, it's kind of like what George Lucas says, like poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah. I might say in retrospect, I enjoyed most of the puzzles in this game, even if one of them was madly annoying until a patch gave me more visual feedback.
Oh, that's the problem with playing something when it first comes out, too. Yeah.
Another required some janky glitching with the adjunct, looking at you 3-point Doran Juleston.
Yikes.
And a third was impeded by having to find the exact right angle to make a shot with the adjunct through a very tiny corridor, like a very tiny hole.
Like if you were a pixel off, it wasn't going to work?
It's not that. It's that it's not self-evident. You had it. What does everyone not do in a game? Usually it's look up. It's look up, and you'll eventually find it. Yeah.
Lame. Okay.
We're not going to go into how the puzzles are solved, as always, but we will explain what we're doing in each realm, and what we're doing is essentially being the sole keeper in the realms. There's no other keepers around.
So you have to maintain everything by yourself, essentially?
Yeah.
Yikes.
And everything is kind of falling apart. We'll touch on how long it's been later, but yeah, we're basically walking in their shoes doing what they did. Let's start with the basics, the stuff that's the same for every realm. Mm-hmm. Every realm has a giant arch in it. It is very conspicuous. It looks cool. It is one of our main goals in each realm is to reach that arch and raise what is called the spire in the middle of each realm.
Okay.
Then we have to get into the spire. That is the next half of the time we're going to spend here. And so we have 3 realms, the Swan. There is a 4th place that will come into play later called the Embrace.
Oh, okay.
Curievale, as I said, is a huge realm of ice and rock. It is also the main water source for the realms and keepers.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, we'll find lists in each realm as to how the realm is kept. It's basically a checklist. Do this, check with other keepers, that stuff.
I'm suddenly having like visions of them finishing something and then checking off a list, but it's like the little chime sound in Microsoft To Do, like ding.
Here, it's all ice and steam and coal.
Oh.
We also have a ton of contraptions to figure out, but that's not unique for this realm, nor is it unique to this game. Cyan loves their mechanisms to tinker with.
Yes.
They are quite large.
Yikes.
There's a lot of giant blocks of ice you have to move, or using giant cranes that have 2 different buckets on them. Yeah. So in the end, we are taking ice, melting it down to produce water and steam for other realms or to power things in this realm. Jewelston is a wild spot of rock, water, and sulfur and acid.
Whoa. Okay. So essentially just like a mini planet Venus is how I feel.
Not quite that bad. Trees, craters. Yeah, it looks cool. This game does look great. Don't get me wrong.
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure what Jewelston provides to the system as a whole between the realms. It could just be resources. There's certainly a focus on sulfur and acid and power, so it could be power delivery for the realms. Don't know that one.
Okay, yeah.
Our mentor only kind of tells us Curievale is the source of water.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it just sounds just like maybe it's just there as an acid trip. Hey-o.
Oh, God. Lastly, we have St. Andrews, and this is very clearly a greenhouse and seed vault.
Okay.
Yeah, there is no mistaking what this is.
Okay.
This also has a massive machine, which we get to pilot for a while, which is very fun, and not at all something I expected to be in a Cyan game.
Oh, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
In many ways, the Edgect makes this a dynamic game, like I said before. We are constantly moving machines we're on with the Edgect, spinning around, hitting another socket, moving something else, opening doors with it, going through closing doors, flipping around. Yeah, you're constantly moving. There's no standing still and plunking at levers on a static screen like with Ribbon.
Spin me right round, baby, right round like a record. I'm sorry. That's exactly what came to my head.
Once we have reached the spire in each realm, we're pretty much done with that realm. Flip a switch, move some mechanisms around inside the spire. Didn't click for me what we were actually doing, but once I got to the Embrace, it all made sense.
Yeah.
Now, when we covered Abduction, I stopped around here. I've explained the basics. I've explained the various worlds. Done.
Yes.
We'll continue in this episode to the conclusion, but I feel it necessary again to give a spoiler warning and maybe a slight review before we get to what's going on. This is Cyan, a company near and dear to me.
Yes.
In some ways, this is their best done story. It eschews the good and bad endings they keep trying to jam in and only focuses on the narrative. There is no, you got to go flip that one lever, otherwise you're dead. There's none of that.
Right. So, instead of giving the illusion of choosing an ending, it's just giving you one solid, albeit completely linear story.
It is much more linear than their previous games, that is true. It has an interesting delivery mechanism for the story in retrospect, but only in retrospect. Again, it kind of is hard to get through without those breadcrumbs.
Okay.
The realms are amazing visual treats, and puzzles are fairly good. A tiny bit simple compared to past games, but pretty good. I'm sure it looks amazing in VR. I wouldn't know. We don't have that functionality here at Lore Together yet. Check our Patreon if you want to help us eventually reach that goal. All that said, when you're playing the first time, it's maddening. The worlds feel sterile. They need a little bit of life. There's stuff everywhere, but you can't click on any of it, really.
Right.
It's missing something that made Abduction feel so great, and that is culture. I'll touch on this at the end as well, but I'm tossing it here if you are not listening to ending spoilers. All the lore in the ending aside, for 95% of the game, we have 12 names, a few realm names, nonsensical words on a wall like Keeper's Sleep and Keeper's Wake, and a bunch of propaganda posters and one very small journal. I have given you all the lore we have.
That's it?
Aside from what our mentor tells us, and what she tells us pops in so infrequently that we may miss it anyway.
That's really disappointing, because one of the things I really liked they did in Abduction was the lore helped build the world and tell the actual story itself. So like by the point where, in spoilers for Abduction, but also watch our Let's Play on our YouTube.
Yeah.
But I remember when we got to the point where we saw essentially what was supposed to be the recordings from who the mayor of our settlement was, I kind of had a feeling that was not him.
Yeah.
Because of the lore that had built up to that, including previous recordings of him and reading about who ended up being the people who were imitating him.
Yeah.
So they have done this well before, giving in these little like these little like, you know, seeds here and there that we can follow.
No pun intended for abduction.
Literally. But like giving us these seeds here and there that actually grow into a full-fledged, dare I say, bouquet of lore.
Yeah.
So
now, all this being said, it does not diminish Cyan as a company for me. I still am looking forward to their next stuff. I want to see what they do outside of remakes, because there's a remake of Riven coming. Mm-hmm. And I hope they learn from their missteps here, or at least the fan feedback on this one. So it's kind of like Mass Effect Andromeda. Is it a great game? No. Is it a good Myst type game? Maybe, but not quite. You know, it's kind of like Mass Effect Andromeda is not a great game, but it's an okay Mass Effect game. You know?
I'll say this about Andromeda. It would have been better received if it didn't have the title Mass Effect in front of it.
True. This doesn't have that going for it, at least.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, let's talk the ending of what's really happening here. Once we do all this stuff in the Spire, in each realm, we unlock the Embrace. Basically, this door opens. Actually, the door slowly opens each time you unlock a spire, and each time you finish a spire, a little bit more of this door opens. It's kind of a nice tease, actually.
Oh, yeah. I like puzzles like that.
Yeah, it kind of cracks open. You're like, what's the light in there? What is that? So
yeah, I feel like there's some JRPGs do that. Am I just like in a fever dream and like Skies of Arcadia had puzzles like that in some of their dungeons?
I couldn't remember off the top of my head.
No,
right
or there might be some other JRPG. Maybe I'm mixing up to way back in the day when I played the original Dark Cloud. Who knows?
So we go into the Embrace, and there's a conveyance pod.
Oh.
When we go inside, though, something weird happens this time, in the fact that something mundane happens. So every time we've been in a conveyance pod until now, it's been completely sealed up. There's like light beams all around us and everything. Like we're teleporting and you just step out and you're there.
Okay.
This time we get in, there's no swirling lights, and it's an elevator. It still looks like a conveyance pod, though. You can just see stuff going past you as you move on an elevator.
Oh, okay.
So it's like, it's weird in that it's mundane, you know?
Huh. Okay.
And yeah, so it takes us some way, actually. And our mentor hits us then with a huge revelation when we get off. Turner was what is called an arriver. The keepers were always told to wait for the arrival. And when he and two others showed up, they rejoiced. Hey, what we're waiting for is here. Problem is, Turner's compatriots are not kind as the keepers. They were cruel masters. The keepers were so ingrained with the ideas that everyone serves everyone else, all were equal, that to be met with people who looked down upon them was kind of a shock. Eventually, one of the keepers, Marta, killed one of the arrivers, though it's never said why, or she never said why. There's some implications just based on the tonality, I would feel. This led to blood and death throughout the realms until only 12 keepers and one arriver were left. And Turner himself, the last arriver, began to use them all for his own power, backed up by weaponry that the keepers did not have.
Oh, no. So this feels like a straight up, colonial kind of story almost. Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, we expect everybody to, this is how people are. So this is how our culture will be. It'll be great. And no, not all people are like that.
They became little more than slaves to him. We're told that they were attending to his every need.
Oh, gross.
Our mentor, in turn, chose to become close to him, not out of respect or anything, but out of a sense of vengeance.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, he told her the truth of it all, something that shocked her to her core, though she wasn't sure if she believed it herself at the time. She slowly hatched a plan and told one of the other keepers this truth. Word spread, and eventually they all turned on her as well because, well...
She was the closest to the one enemy they were serving, yeah.
She goaded Turner into using his weaponry to put the rest of the keepers into deep sleep, and then she sedated him and put him into deep sleep as well. Left alone to while the time away, she has been thinking, which leads us to going through all of this. She is dead, and yet this is all her plan. To have us run this whole rat race and see what the keepers knew, and then finally see the truth. And here it is. We enter the embrace. There is a bunch of pictures on the wall. No names. They look familiar. They're not famous they're not famous pictures, but they are famous people. We'll get to that in a minute.
Huh.
Downstairs, there is a bunch of pictures of the original keepers.
Okay.
And a bunch of beds. And then there is a door. We find actually there's two doors. There's one door that's circular. Looks like an airlock of some sort. Not wholly out of place, but kind of conspicuous too. It doesn't quite fit with the feel of everything else. And there's also another door that does fit with the rest of the aesthetic. And behind it, we find a metallic suit that we can put on. Now, this is not the first time we've found one. We've been dealing with these metallic suits twice now.
Okay.
Once in Jewelston, there was like an acid bath. You had to wear this to protect yourself, to like take care of stuff in the acid. And there was one time in Curiervale where you have to use it to take care of frozen ice in water and stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
By this time, when I found this in my last episode of my blind Let's Play, available to patrons soon on YouTube, I had been in this suit for an hour now underwater, and I was just like, I don't want to get in it. I don't want to get in it. I'm glad I did.
Yeah.
We get in the suit this time. We walk out the door, not into water, not into acid, but into a void. Space all around us as we stand on the edge of a gargantuan spaceship. Solar sails unfurled into the distance and debris glittering in starlight. It is an awesome scene.
Wow.
Being the space nut I was, I loved this scene.
Okay.
This made my whole day when I was playing this. It makes me want to work on games, not just write about them, honestly. Like,
yeah.
I would do some space game in the cosmos if I had any sort of art or programming talent. It might explain why I've liked Starfield for my blind Let's Play so much, because it's like, yay, space! I'd be like that one computer in Portal. Space!
Oh, yeah.
At the end of the ship, away from us, far above us, essentially, there are 3 giant orbs resting against the central cylinder. One guess what those are?
Biospheres.
We tech the tech a little. By that, I mean we unlock that circular door, kind of have an external locking mechanism we have to unlock. And back inside, we can move beyond that from the 1910s decor into more 1980s era space travel, including like stuff that looks like that real fed printer paper with the lines.
Oh my gosh. God, going back to my childhood.
Yeah. And now we get the actual lore dump we've been craving. The, quote, horrible truth of everything is that Firmament is an initiative, a mission, a generational ship launched with full-on biomes to house things like seeds, animals, and humans.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Who cooked all this up? Names you might recognize, some of whom were able to privately fund this whole endeavor.
Oh.
Which they designed to preserve and secure the future of humanity through interstellar exploration. This ship, the Atellus, Greek for incomplete apparently, was launched in 1910.
Whoa. Okay.
The founders of the Firmament Initiative were steel industrialist Andrew Carnegie, likely the source of that money.
Right.
Dual Nobel laureate and physicist and chemist Marie Curie.
Wow. Okay.
Author of the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Imaginative engineer and scientist Nikola Tesla.
How did I not see that his name was going to suddenly come up with this?
Early Russian rocket scientist Konstantin Tsiolkovsky.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And acclaimed science fiction author Jules Verne.
Okay, I guess.
The whole mission had 3 different phases. Phase 1, the Great Lift.
Okay, getting the resources?
Yep. Phase 1 centered on sending crucial Earth-based elements, minerals, flora, and fauna into orbit. Mm-hmm. This is amazing for 1910, honestly.
Yeah. Like, how did they just, like, weather balloons,
So,
essentially?
no, the founders utilized their considerable resources to launch massive projectiles into orbit using 12 colossal rail rifles situated at various mountainous locations on Earth. Between 1895 and 1907, over 6,000 containers of cargo were transported into space, totaling more than 16 million tons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Including technology for the assembly of the Starship. In 1910, the mission commenced with the Atlas gradually accelerating towards a nearby star system via rudimentary steam propulsion and solar sails. Literally doing steampunk.
Wow. Okay.
Phase 2, augmentation. The Atlas initially possessed very limited acceleration capabilities, as we just said. The mission's design relied on future advancements in space technology to enhance the Starship during its journey. The founders correctly anticipated that future technology would be able to catch up with and upgrade the Atlas, potentially redirecting it to a different star system if a more suitable one was discovered. The timing and frequency of such augmentations were uncertain, but attachment and docking ports were incorporated in anticipation.
Okay.
Phase 3, the embrace and the arrival. The Starship Atlas features artificial gravity generated by the vessel's rotation. Fair enough.
That makes sense, yeah.
To create the required gravity, cargo realms are positioned further from the center of rotation, resulting in a structurally weaker vessel susceptible to stress during intense acceleration. Consequently, the ship was also designed to retract and secure the cargo realms during periods of high acceleration. That's kind of what we've been doing whenever we flip those levers in the Spire, is we're moving the realm.
Okay.
It was expected this would only be necessary for arrival or for a final upgrade providing unanticipated thrust.
Okay.
The Keepers were prepared for these events with a narrative combining the arrival of trained personnel required to engage the embrace, arrivers, and the actual arrival of the Starship Atlas at its final destination. So there is a crew.
Mm-hmm.
They are completely segregated from the Keepers. They can kind of keep an eye on the Keepers, but they can't interact with them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Really. And they're not supposed to. They're just kind of there to guide the ship. And basically, the Keepers go into sleep. And when they sleep, their memories are wiped, but the Keepers have been there the whole time. The same Keepers for the most part.
So they've just been in essentially in a stasis.
They go into deep sleep. Memories are wiped. They come back, work, deep sleep, awake, work.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And due to the fact that the Keepers' memories are wiped every time they go into the deep sleep, and they are under strict cultural indoctrination where the realms are their entire known universe, there's no way they have any culture beyond what they are fed by recordings and books.
Right. So their ability to adapt and think on their own is very limited because all they know is the process of keeping, essentially.
So as a Keeper, our mentor has no clue who she was when this all started. None of the Keepers do, as their memories are erased in the deep sleep, as we mentioned. We know a little bit about the Arrivers, specifically Turner, had a bunch of disciplinary actions against him.
Oh, wow.
And in the end, was clearly unfit for the role of Arriver, as were the others with him. They all kind of abused their power. We do know that they were sent on behalf of the United Earth Space Agency.
Wow.
And that the Atlas had some massive upgrades since its launch some 300 years before the game starts.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Through another airlock door, we move beyond the 1980s style decor to something, more befitting modern Star Trek.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're suddenly face to face with the sleep pods of the crew, as well as a visual, holographic representation of the ship, which is not what we've seen before.
Wow.
It is here we get to find a revelation that we have been playing the monster Turner all this time, though with no memories, does it really matter who we were?
So he became a Keeper.
Not by choice.
She made him a Keeper.
Yeah. And Turner now has something he didn't have before, perspective. He's lived the Keepers' lives, done their jobs as they would have. All the ship's AI needed from him in the end was his DNA to act as the final lock before the final jump to a new home. Basically, the AI is sitting there being like, welcome, Ensign Turner, blah, blah, blah. You being here and the fact that you have your DNA means my job is ready to go.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah. The final upgrade is complete. Our mentor's body lies skeletonized in the captain's chair on the bridge of the ship.
Oh, no.
Our mentor shows up one last time, and despite it all, she's still kind of judging us. She talks about how she never had a choice, just as we also have had no choice. Quote, I placed you in the threshold 7 years ago. You slept and forgot. I sat alone and remembered. You woke up, I lied to you, and used you. You see how it feels. Then she proceeds to lay into us for things we did in what is essentially a previous life. Like,
Yeah.
To her credit, she does know that it's not at all rational what she's saying. And now that we have perspective and can right the wrongs by finding a new life for the keepers that are still in deep sleep. That's those names on the wall. Those are the keepers still in deep sleep.
Oh, wow. The 12 that remain?
Yeah. She bids adieu, and the AI directs the ship to Fold Space, to Tau Ceti, and the credits. We never see Tau Ceti. It just...
Okay.
Yeah. Now, I feel this game needs something more, and there's a few things that people actually miss. Our mentor left her messages when Turner was in deep sleep for 7 years. We just said that.
Yeah.
She's full-on skeletonized.
Right.
And based on the date in Turner's personal log and the year the AI gives us when we get to the bridge, it's been like a century or more since Turner was put into deep sleep.
But there's this mention of 7 years?
I think it was 7 years when she recorded it and expected it to be the 12 years of normal.
Yeah.
But something somewhere glitched or went wrong.
And because she doesn't know everything. That
right.
Makes sense.
That being said, the game does feel a little bit lacking, and I want to offer a suggestion to Cyan. I know, I am likely one of hundreds.
Oh, I'm sure.
And this is not my first suggestion to Cyan. Please break away from directly copying the 30-year-old Mist Island every single remake and flesh it out into a world like people make it these days. Turn it into one that feels like someone lived there.
Where are the bedrooms? You have said this how many times? Where are the bedrooms?
It's sad that I found a fan recreated. We actually tweeted this.
Yes.
I think a fan map was captivating and interesting and felt like a world.
I gotta reshare it on our new socials and basically be like, Cyan, please. Like now that Twitter is not as you can't navigate it as well. We got to put it somewhere else.
This game's narrative could carry more weight in general if we had more exposure to the keepers. Fine. I walk the keeper's path. All right. We walk the keeper's path, but we don't know them. Our mentor literally says, you learn their names. Nowhere is that a requirement. You see their names, but you don't need to know them. They could just be, oh, that's names on a wall.
Why couldn't there just be like a log of the last time it happened and there's a keeper?
That's exactly what I'm about to tell you.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm glad we're in the same page here.
Yeah, you can fully ignore that room with the painted names. There are people who didn't even notice the drag marks who were commenting on the Reddit being like, there were drag marks? Yeah, there were drag marks. So the only names we really learn are Marta, one other person I don't remember is mentioned, and Turner. Like, we don't know anyone else's names. There's like 3 names we learned this whole thing. Mm-hmm. Other than, the founders and stuff, but like nobody who's actually on the ship.
Right.
So my solution, keepers should keep a log about their lives while keeping.
Yes.
Whether this is made known to the next iteration of keeper is immaterial. You have a captive culture. You can literally just file them away for the greater good, and nobody reads them until we do or until they find home.
It just makes sense for something that this is so imperative to work and you may want to figure out what happened. Why wouldn't you do that for essentially the intergenerational space travel equivalent of a black box, right?
You also have, again, a captive culture.
Yeah.
They go into the sleep. Here is the journal. It's put into some sacred box or something that the crew reads.
Right. Wait, or when you finally get to land, you get to hear from who you were before you had the deep sleep before.
Right. The point is, there is a way you can make it so that somebody has control over what's in them, but then the next iteration can read from other keepers in the past.
Can you just imagine how much more compelling it would be for Turner to, still doesn't have to remember who he is, but then that last passage through the most modern iteration starts to hear of of a recording of one of the keepers saying like, "Hi, Cindy, you might not remember yourself, but this is who we are when we decided to join the mission in 1909. I was an avid reader. I left behind a twin sister." Like there's so many interesting things you could have done with that.
Do they, and like, I don't know if this is covered because again, glitchy mentor dialogue. Do they keep the same names? In that case, would Cindy be like, "Oh, this is who I was back in 1909"? Like,
the process of this is who you were when you joined, and then you can have like a log of like, you went through 12 cycles. This is who you were during cycle 7. And obviously maybe like, you don't have to make an entry for every single one, but you could make it so like, okay, you only are able to unlock entries 4, 7, and 12. Like, go through, read them.
Even then, like, so it doesn't have to tie into their old selves.
Yeah.
Even if you have a captive culture, no matter what it is, there could be non-puzzle related problems in the realms that they fix. There could be drama that crops up that they try to resolve with this way that they know. Like,
you could have a puzzle where the spire is, I don't know what happened to the spire, but it tends to get ice in the midsection, and it's made it harder for me to do the job as a keeper.
Yeah,
and
you're approaching this not knowing the puzzles, so yeah. But
like you could, but
you can make this work in so many different ways, and there just needs to be some journals somewhere. Give me so I mentioned earlier that there was like that three connection door or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, that gave power to a bunker in Jewelston, like the second bunker. And I saw that bunker. I'm like, I gotta get power there. There's got to be something in there. There's going to be a journal. There's going to be something. There's going to be another person, something, a dead body, anything. I get through this stupid thing that for some reason always glitches for me. And inside there is just a checklist of how to keep the realm. I titled that episode of the LP, The Rant.
Oh my gosh. There's so much that they could have done, because what it sounds like is like they wanted to do kind of like a twist at the end, but it really should have been a true mystery.
You don't even need to do a twist. You don't have to spoil the twist at all with this.
No, but that's what I mean. Like, make it a mystery. Make it more like a little less. I'm trying to think. I'm thinking of it in terms of the Shyamalan films that I watched back in the day. A little less The Village and a little more Sixth Sense, okay? Like, some people were able to solve the Sixth Sense with just 1 or 2 scenes. Other people, like, they built up and they were like, oh, that would make sense. And then there were people who, at the end, were like, holy crap, I know the twist.
Yeah. Now, the game is not bad. It is a very flawed gem in need of work, though. Mm-hmm. Cyan has never really done the whole DLC thing. I mean, there were a couple expansions for Uru, but that's an online
it's a very different experience.
Game.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time they revisit the idea of expanding on their games. Or just release an update that adds more to this one. This needs something. And I hope they do it. And again, this is not diminishing Cyan to me. I will still happily get, well, I'm going to get the Riven remake anyway. I'll happily, if they want to do another original game, I'll happily back it. But I do feel a little bit kind of like, oh, you guys were a little too ambitious and kind of lost the forest for the trees a little bit.
Right. I could see that.
So that's Firmament in all its
I could see why
pluses and minuses.
You can still enjoy it, but want it to be more and want it to be better. Like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I saw people complaining about the puzzles. I saw people complaining, like, also the fact that before the patches, there was definitely problems. Mm-hmm. There's this whole power puzzle on Jewelston that was impossible to figure out until they added visual indicators of how power was moving.
Okay.
Like, it wasn't impossible, but damn, it was hard. Like, I could not do it.
Right.
So, anyway, I guess you'll be starting that next time.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to start it knowing where it's supposed to go to.
Might be interesting, though.
I think I won't be able to stop myself from seeing where they could have left better clues. Like, I feel like that's just going to be the way that I play through this. So if you don't mind a first hour that might become that's going to be the Thursday after this is released to the public. And as I mentioned earlier in this episode, we have on the alternate Thursdays our Mass Effect live stream where patrons can vote on some of the choices, which Mystic is literally going to post that right after we finish recording, universe willing at this point.
Yep.
So we hope you join us for those. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the great reviews, and we will catch you next time.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.